Welcome back to another episode of Debatable with your host, Nina. I want to tell you what it took to record this episode. So, first of all, thank you for showering the last episode with so much love. It was a joy to record and get to interview Walden Bello. It was amazing to get to read his book. And I'm very happy that a lot of people were interested in the things that we both had to say and the questions that I had to ask. So naturally, wanting to ride off of that, because at the end of the day, I am still a content creator. I gotta ride those hype waves. I wanted to sit down and record. When I sat down to record, my main recording app needed to update itself. And I love my recording app. It is the script, but they don't sponsor me. In fact, I am here to complain about them because the update took so long. And so, a few days after that interview launched, I had to set my own plans aside. A few days later, I went back and I was like, okay, I'm ready to record. So I sat down, I opened the app. Luckily, the script was working. But then I find out my mic needed to have a update, which is weird. I did not think that mics needed to have an update, but here we are. So I updated it. And it took also a long time, so I delayed my recording again. Now, while that delay was happening, I fell down a separate rabbit hole. Now, you see, I love my Kindle. My Kindle is my go to e reader. I've had it since 2021, back before Book Talk and e readers were popular in general. So I managed to get the last version of the Kindle for 5,000 pesos, which is a little less than $100. When right now, because of the rise of e readers, they have become quite expensive, even secondhand. So I consider myself lucky. Now, during that time while I was waiting for everything to update, I was considering giving myself a hardware update for the Kindle because they had released a color soft version. Now, I'm not a big fan of reading colored comics. I like manga. I just like black and white books. That's my go to. But I really like the idea of being able to highlight things in color. So I was researching on it, as one does when they are quite obsessed with a particular upgrade. And I was stumbling upon a lot of very interesting drama in the e reader community. Because, of course, any hobby would have that kind of community. So I was contemplating the Kindle Colorsoft. And when I searched it up on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, which is another story, by the way. It's kind of weird how those have become our main search platforms. But I digressed. But when I searched those things, I realized a lot of people were jailbreaking their Kindles. And upon reading and upon watching the different TikToks and YouTube videos, it was because one, I think the new versions of the Kindles, the software and the hardware, limits your ability to download ebooks that you have bought from the Kindle store or Amazon store. And back in 2009, Kindle removed all copies of 1984 and Animal Farm from people's devices, even when they paid for it already. And of course, this sparked a lot of outrage. It was very dystopian, it was very ironic. Now, I dug into that, obviously, because it felt too surreal, especially for 2009. It turned out the person who published the book did not have the license to have that book and to earn from that book. So it makes sense that they would pull that out. Of course, they just decided to go for clickbait titles, but that's not the point. What was more concerning was the fact that they had the ability to just remotely delete things that people already bought, that by logic they should have already owned. And it made me think about the volatility of all the new cloud systems that we live in. So you have Netflix that can just pull out shows at the last minute. You have Friendster, and I used to have Friendster. I don't remember when I did, but I did. And I'm sure I uploaded a lot of videos. I'm sure I learned HTML a little bit to like blast some music on my profile or whatever. And all of that is gone. I think the last time I checked, Friendster was like a gaming platform now. Actually, let me look into that. What is Friendster now? Uh, Friends. So I googled it. It says Friendster is a social network that prioritizes users over growth. We will never sell your data. Get early access. First of all, that's kind of intimidating to put as your bio, but whatever. The point is, there was a time that all their things got wiped, which means all of my photos got wiped as well. And the past few weeks, the World Schools Philippines page. So if you forgot, I'm also the national coach for the World Schools team of the Philippines. Our page just vanished. Do I know why? No. I freaked out about it because obviously there was a lot of history in that page. I don't know if I violated any rules. I figured, like my government was cracking down on debaters because we were very progressive or whatever. So I reached out to all of the past team managers, the coaches. I really tried to dig deep. I also found out that a lot of debate institutes in the Philippines had their pages just removed last minute. Luckily, a few weeks after that, the page went back up along with other pages. I still don't know why it went missing, but it made me acutely aware of how I have no control over anything. And the fact that this recording was delayed because I had to wait for an update, my mic had to update, I had to deal with all that stress. And I still don't know if I want my new Kindle. It made me read up on what is going on. And I found out that there is this new term popping up in other areas of the internet. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called technofeudalism. And basically, with that really long story, I want to talk about that. So, what is techno-feudalism? Techno-feudalism was a term that was coined by someone called Yanis Varoufakis, and he wrote this book with the same name. He basically talks about how, in the progression of society, we have gone through stages of feudalism, then eventually capitalism. And he claims that we have entered a new phase which combines the two with the element of technology and has introduced this new thing called techno feudalism. Now, before I can discuss what techno feudalism is, I need to discuss a little bit about what feudalism is. If you already know what feudalism is, then just think of this as a review, basically. Feudalism is a system where, back in the monarchy times, there was a king that would assign some power to lords that held multiple pieces of lands, and those lords would divvy up those lands and give them to people called vassals. Now, the vassals would have control over these pieces of land, which were called fiefs. And basically, they would also gain claim for the people who were born into those fiefs or fiefdoms. So those people were called serfs. And it was a pretty oppressive system that relied on birth lottery. So if you were born into a serf family, then you would also have to work on that land and give your labor basically for free to that vassal who reported to a lord who reported to a king. Now, of course, this is a very simplified version of what fiefdom is and what feudalism was, but that used to be how things were. Eventually, there was a rise of capitalists. And what capitalists did was they either converted the land that they owned into factories or they set up individual factories. And it allowed people who were initially serfs, so these were people that were laboring out for certain pieces of land, it gave them an option. If you want to earn more, work for this factory. And back in that day, of course, you could see why people would take that option. It was viable, it was the equivalent of having a second job, all of that. Of course, this eventually boomed into what we know as the Industrial Revolution and the Industrial Period, which made capitalists even more powerful. But basically, that's what the book claims. We eventually shifted into capitalism. I'm not going to claim this to be absolutely true. There are many debates in the Philippines about whether we are still considered feudalism or capitalism. That's not the point. I'm just narrating what this guy said so that I could eventually get into techno-feudalism. But anyway, capitalism, they said, was the shift to fiefdom towards one that prioritized profit as the main arbiter of richness in comparison to wealth. So owners, a lot of people would claim, are still under some kind of feudalist system, and I don't blame them for thinking that way. In fact, I probably need to do a little bit more research on the distinctions between these things. Again, I'm just focused on techno feudalism. A lot of these things that I'm outlining are more related to like Marxism and communism. So perhaps another episode on that. So profit was now the priority over rent. And again, this is a very simplistic separation that I'm doing. I will probably need to cite someone for this, but I am not in the mood to. For full transparency, I haven't read the book. I probably will at one point. In fact, a lot of people are quite divided on this. I just wanted to raise it as a very interesting discussion point. So basically, from feudalism, we went to capitalism. And because of capitalism, a lot of companies were set up. So you have Amazon, you have people running the internet websites that we know and love or not love, but we are on it, whether we like it or not. So techno feudalism, in the words of Yanis Varoufakis, basically has elements of feudalism, but with a new skin. So instead of having lords and having fiefs, we have cloudalist and clouds. So Facebook is a cloud. Friendster used to be a cloud. Spotify, Kindle, Prime, Netflix, all of these are clouds. And what happens is the claim of the book is that as individuals, because we have no choice but to participate in these platforms, we end up as the cloud equivalent of serfs back in the day. And a lot of these platforms are free. So, what that means is we are basically working the land for free for exchange of being able to participate there, which was, if you think about it, the equivalent of serfs having to till the land and cultivate it for exchange or in exchange for being able to live there. So that's the mindset that this author has. And a lot of people I see agree. A lot of people feel that this is a very simplistic way of looking at things. Again, I'm not here to set the definitive answer. This is debatable. You're supposed to debate on these things. But I think this is a very interesting topic. So, if we are the cloud equivalent of serfs, then a lot of our participation in these platforms don't directly go to us. And this is actually proven with a lot of how these platforms work. So, if you are on Facebook, chronically online like I am, you probably noticed that a lot of individuals have been posting recently about the increase of taxes, I believe, for advertising that pages are going to launch on Facebook. Admittedly, Debatable has not tried to do advertising on our page. We were considering it at multiple points, but we could not justify the money being spent. Now we found out that I think Facebook will now get a bigger cut of your potential profit. And even if you don't profit, the fact that you want to set up an advertisement, you will have to pay Facebook a little bit more. So there's a increase in the value added tax. Now, that might be one niche example, but if we zoom out, I'm not monetized yet on Facebook. Please go subscribe. I want to be monetized. But from what I know when it comes to the YouTube creator space, when you gain some profit from advertisements, from whatever, I believe YouTube takes a significant cut. And of course, you will still earn big bucks because advertising is a really big deal on the internet. I've read multiple books about it. I might discuss it in other episodes soon or maybe in the like far future or whatever. But it is still quite concerning that every time an individual puts in their work, so long as it exists online or through some sort of technology, that piece of technology has to get a cut. This is not new. If you take Grab in the Philippines or anywhere in Southeast Asia, or you have had experience with Uber or have talked to your Uber drivers, you would know that every time they earn something, Uber takes a significant cut. So, as a middleman, they are entitled in a way to some of the profit that we have as individuals that are actively working the land, so to speak. In this case, in techno feudalism, it is the cloud. The reason I bring this up is one, I've had a lot of frustrating experiences recently with cloud data as well as the inconvenience that comes with technology, but it also brings into light this question of autonomy, right? I struggle thinking about whether to update my devices, knowing fully that cloud systems are much more involved. There was a point where while my Descript was updating, I went into my default audio app, which is Audacity, which is an OG in the space for podcasters and like music and audio creators. And I found out recently they've also integrated themselves into a cloud. And I felt it was kind of sad that everything now is now reliant on clouds and servers and whatever. To make it more nuanced to debate as well, if you are a debater, you've probably encountered either Tabbycat or Calico Tab or Tabber if you are an OG like me, and you would know a lot of them rely on some cloud service. It relies on the existence of servers, it relies on buying more servers to keep that data in check. Tabber doesn't have a lot of its data anymore. In fact, Tabber shut down. It was operating for free for many years, RIP Tabber, but they had to shut down. They couldn't compete. The only options they had was to either start charging people that were using it or just to close. And the creator of Tabber decided it would be better off to just close, given that there were other more robust competitors like Tabbycat and Calico Cat, which I think are the same thing, but with all these tech changes, I don't really know. And we have to pay for those now. And every time we use social media, we also have to remember that when a platform is free, likely we are the product. We are the serfs that are tilling the land. We give them content for free. When I post things, for example, on Spotify, I don't have to pay them. I used to because Spotify didn't have a direct link, but now they have Anchor. And that's like more info behind the scenes. I'll tell you about it in some other time. But basically, what happens now is because a lot of this information is free, I'm very wary of what exactly I am giving up. So I'm not the first person to think this, I'm sure. Obviously, this book created by Yanis Varoufakis already proves that I'm not the first person to think this. I think a lot of people are also becoming hyper aware of how much their data is being compromised online, as well as how dangerous it is that a lot of our information, a lot of our lives are reliant on these cloud services that ultimately are held by profit driven companies. Now, not to sound like the socialist that I am, I don't want to make people start fearing for their lives. Of course, a lot of this are driven by algorithms, a lot of this are driven by profit incentives, a lot of this are driven by things that we can't control. But I don't think the reaction should be to start fear mongering and being scared. At most, you can be frustrated. I think everyone has the right to be that. But I think it's just worth being aware that these things are happening. Techno feudalism, whatever your views of it are, if it's just an extension of capitalism, if you think it's not even really feudalism, it doesn't matter. The point is, you need to be aware. You need to start taking ownership of the information you are taking online. As much as possible, you should find a way to have a distinct personality and database that exists outside of a cloud. I've been doing this for years accidentally, so don't tell Amazon this. But I've been pirating a lot of their books, right? Also, I have moved away from cloud services and I have like multiple notebooks to keep my thoughts. I don't know what to do with this podcast though. I'll be real. I really have not made backups of all the two, like, I don't know how many episodes I have at this point, like 100 plus episodes, 120 plus. I stopped counting. I really need to store my information elsewhere. The moral lesson you need to take from this, from Kindle deleting 1984 and Animal Farm, to Netflix taking away your favorite shows, to Friendster weirdly deleting entire profiles, to the World Schools Philippine page going missing, don't keep your information in clouds. If you have no choice, fine, but as much as possible, try to keep it in a hard drive, in a USB, in a device that cannot be reached by those who have their claws all over the internet. Which is a weird thing to say. It's weird for me to say, considering that I don't want people to panic. I do think we have to be a little bit realistic. And that's it. For full transparency, it is the middle of the night. I really just wanted to sit down and rant. If this did not make any sense, I will make up for it in another episode. Again, I'm trying to, for full transparency as well, I'm trying to delve away from hyper specific debate content. I realize that not everyone wants to learn debate as intensely as I have. Not everyone wants to learn debate in the same way I did or in a competitive manner. A lot of my listeners are non debaters. A lot of my listeners are people that have retired from debate. And I love you. Thank you for being here. I will commit to making more intelligible content, however, regardless of your status in the debate community. I will be making a lot more skills content for those who want it, but I am trying to be less debate centric. um, I think there's a lot of material online already that's very debate centric, and I will gladly reference those people. I love them. I love the rise of debate content online. I just feel that given I am quite old already, I'm not also a very active in the circuit beyond coaching and team managing and hosting my own competitions. I don't want to take away the ability from other people who might understand debate as a skill set a little bit more. But what's never going to change is my love for matter loading, my love for diving into deep, high, hyper specific content like this one. So if you like this kind of content, consider giving us a like, giving us a follow, subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. It will really help me a lot. Again, I don't earn a lot from this. In fact, I don't earn at all, besides when I launch workshops and competitions. But maybe one day I will get to benefit from this technofeudalism. And as much as I don't like it, if you can't beat them, at least try to exploit them, I guess. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next rant in the next episode. Bye bye.